Hey everybody, welcome back to the Retro Future Guy channel. I'm Kevin, and yeah, let me start by saying that this video probably could have and should have been out weeks ago to discuss the Nintendo Switch 2 for any prospective buyers. Maybe you've already made your purchase, but if you haven't, then perhaps my perspective will help you make your decision in one direction or other. Spoiler alert for my own video is that it's going back. Before we get started, do me a solid and hit like and subscribe on the video, even if you think that you might not share my actual opinion. So this is not to make anyone feel bad about their purchase. If you got it and you love it, then more power to you. I don't consider myself necessarily representative of the vast majority of people out there, so there's a good probability that if you know what you're getting into, you're gonna love it. If you caught my Switch 2 pre-release video that was titled I Have Concerns, I outlined a number of red flags that I saw, and yet I still picked it up. I wanted to give it a fair shake. I wanted to think that some of the things like the additional screen size, the faster processor, the experience, the nostalgia, all of those things were going to weigh out in favor of it. And if I'm being honest, there are a couple of games that I really, really wanted to play. And I hoped that those would be enough to make me do the mental gymnastics to justify holding on to the device. But after less than 2 weeks of owning it, I was ready to take it back. The only reason I've actually held on to it this long is that I realized in the making of this video, if I needed some additional footage of it, I better have it for that. But as soon as I'm done with this, I'm reboxing the thing and taking it back to Costco. And yeah, I'm gonna feel like a huge ass doing that, having helped boost the Nintendo sales numbers only to then take the thing back and take it out of circulation for somebody else. So I really wish I hadn't done that, but live and learn. From a hardware perspective, this thing is cool. I really like it. The 8-inch diagonal screen is a massive improvement over the original, despite the fact that it's LED. The original Switch one that I had was also LED. I never got the OLED version of it, nor did I know anyone who owned it. But having other OLED devices, I recognize that it's probably better, at least as far as like blacks go and possibly just general richness of the colors. But I think that this thing is pretty phenomenal from a hardware perspective. And the Joy-Cons are bigger and just detach and reattach magnetically with like a click that is just more satisfying than it has any right to be. Oh, love it. The whole thing just looks and feels so much more premium than the original one did, which always just felt like a plasticky toy. This feels like a quality unit, and well, you're paying for it. From the beginning, I was a little surprised at the download speeds being as bad as they were. The original Switch always sucked for me, and so I was hoping I'd be pleasantly surprised with the second one, but it wasn't great. But this was launch day, and I figured that it was just with so many people hitting the servers, it was going to be slow. It was better, but still not great after I plugged it into Ethernet. Again, launch day, so not a fair criticism at that time. Also, it's my own fault for having downloaded everything onto my Switch 2 because I wanted it set up the way I was planning on keeping it, assuming that I kept the device. But even just to get through Mario Kart World, which is the first thing I started, took me just hours and hours. And again, like I said, it wasn't until I plugged it into Ethernet that things actually started to move. And then I found myself irritated by the fact that Nintendo essentially makes you assign what your primary device is. So you're kind of transferring ownership from the Switch 1 over to the Switch 2. And again, maybe that is not a fair criticism for Nintendo alone, because for the past couple of generations, it's similar to the way it's been on Sony PlayStations and Microsoft Xboxes. I think it's just the fact that I've gotten used to using a Steam Deck, and I have my Steam library on like 5 different devices at any given time. And so long as I'm not trying to use those things simultaneously, it doesn't care. I think what irks me with Nintendo doing it is just that with portability being such a major draw to it, having to connect to the internet to say, oh, okay, now this is my primary device, just seems like a pain in the ass. Let me just also take a second to say I'm not just saying, oh, you should get a Steam Deck, because it's not that easy. It really depends on the kind of games that you want to play and what else, if anything, you want to be able to do with that device. Now, I do have a large Steam library, but believe me when I say that I am entirely platform agnostic. I work on Macs, I work on Windows machines, occasionally I work on Linux machines. Once or twice a year, I switch between my iPhone and my Android devices, depending on what cool features have rolled out, or more frequently, which of the companies is pissing me off less. And I also switch between console gaming on my PS5 or my Xbox One or my Switch Original or my Android tablet. So on each of these, there are things that I love and hate, but I don't love any one platform or any one company to the exclusion of the others. So as much as this is going to sound like maybe a little bit ranty against Nintendo and the Switch 2, I think it's just my disappointment in it. I expected more than I felt like I was getting. But so let's get to the games. The only ones that I felt really compelled to purchase were Mario Kart World and Fast Fusion, which, for better or worse, those are both racing games. And I say for better or worse because usually when you get tired of one game, at least for myself, I'll say that I want to switch genres. I want to go from a racing game to a platformer or a puzzle game or a fighting game or a shooter. And so with the only two new games that I wanted to purchase, both being racing games, I probably didn't have quite as much of an appetite to just keep playing and playing and playing in a single session. So Mario Kart World is undoubtedly impressive, particularly visually. It looks like a Pixar movie come to life. It just exudes charm. It's a lot of fun, and I really liked it. And I played the heck out of it for about 2 hours and had gotten gold on every cup in the World Tour. And then the credits were rolling. And then I went back in 150 cc's and 3-starred all of them, and that took another handful of hours. Then I moved over to the Knockout Tour and knocked that out over the course of about 3 hours, and found myself not even wanting to try to go back to get 3 stars on every segment of every course, because it just felt so very luck-based with whether or not you were going to get knocked out by a red or blue shell inches before the checkpoint line. And I think that part of that is it's been a while since I've played the other Mario Kart games, and maybe it was rose-tinted glasses about what that experience used to be like. And I get it. They want some sort of parity between newcomers and people who are seasoned veterans, but it just felt like very difficult to feel like you were winning because of your skill versus largely luck in the final moments of any given course. I tried enough of the P-switch missions and the open world stuff and finding the Peach coins to realize that gathering stickers was not going to be enough of a draw to keep on bringing me back. And again, this is where I don't think I'm representative of most people, but I am not a particularly social gamer. I do have social games that I play, a couple of them, with friends, but I don't love jumping in with a bunch of randoms. So again, I think Mario Kart World is a very social game. And so I recognize I'm not using it to the fullest. I just think I expected a little bit more single player content and longevity than I felt like I was getting out of it. And it's not to say that it won't have that in the future. It's entirely possible that Nintendo will roll out a ton of new tracks before they inevitably start doing paid DLC. But as I got done with what there was to do inside of like a day or two, I just felt like this to me was not an $80 experience, which is what they're asking for that, unless you get it as a pack-in with the unit. So then I tried Fast Fusion, which was a Wipeout-styled indie racer. I think it's fair to call it indie. But it is only $15, and I think that it was a terrific value for the money. It was a great example of technically what the system could accomplish. And even though it was bare bones, I felt like it was certainly worth the $15. It would have been worth twice that, frankly. But again, a couple hours in, I had pretty much seen and unlocked everything that there was to see. And at that point, all there is to do is to grind for additional ships that you can then fuse with other ships to make yourself theoretically faster and more powerful. But again, the rubber banding that was present on Mario Kart World is so strong that you never felt like you were really getting super skillful at it, more just getting lucky. But still, for the money, super solid game. Then games like Cyberpunk or Street Fighter 6, I would have loved to have had those, but the thing is, I already own them on the Steam Deck, and I already own them on the PS5, and with one of those two games, there are particularly predatory microtransactions with the season passes and the fighter passes and the unlocking of colors and alternate costumes and all that kind of crap. And guess what? It isn't Cyberpunk. But yeah, I had no desire to actually feed that machine and buy those a third time, particularly when all reports were that they were slightly weaker versions of what I already owned twice. Battery life, yikes. My average on Mario Kart World and Fast Fusion was, I think, 2 hours and 17 minutes. And it wasn't a huge discrepancy between them. I actually thought that Fast Fusion was going to chew it a lot faster. And it turned out that that was like 10 or 12 minutes less than Mario Kart World was. So I was pretty surprised and disappointed about that. And I get it that we're a decade away from anybody allowing you to swap out the battery. It's just a question of plugging in an external battery to get additional power. But again, that's like no great shakes to get 2 hours and 17 minutes. And you can absolutely find ways on other devices, whether that's the Steam Deck or the GPD WinMax 2 that I have, to ratchet down the TDP to actually eke more power out of it over a longer period of time. Now, granted, I tend to like to have my screen on pretty bright, so your mileage may vary in terms of the battery longevity that you get, but I don't think it would be a lot more than that. And look, I knew battery life was going to take a hit with the larger screen and the higher resolution and the better processor. I just think that, again, when you've got a device that's supposed to be able to be portable, to have battery life that's that weak, and arguably weaker than I had on the Switch 1, it's a pretty bitter pill, at least for me. If you were playing docked, I think that that problem kind of goes away. But for me, being able to take it wherever I want, on a car or plane, take it into the backyard, like, that's actually part of the draw, or would have been part of the draw. And so to feel like I needed to be tethered to a battery pack, again, was like another little strike against it. So now let's talk about the Joy-Cons. These are better. They're definitely better in a lot of ways. They're larger, for one thing, although it doesn't make great use of that real estate when everything is so far over to one side. But I will say, like, the buttons on the top are much larger than they were, and the whole thing just feels better in size and weight and the click of it, that they're better. They're not great. And the thing is after 15 minutes of playing with the device in my hand, I just felt like my hands cramping in a way that they really don't do with the Steam Deck, just because of the ergonomics of those. It's very, very different between them. I just ended up playing on the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller, which I had also picked up. And while not a huge difference or upgrade over the Switch 1 Pro controller, it's really, really comfortable. And I like using this. I think it's a super premium feeling controller. I don't love the fact that the what should be analog trigger buttons are just digital, which means when you're racing, you're either on the accelerator or the gas or you're off it. You're not halfway in between them because there's no pressure sensitivity. So that's a bit of a bummer about it. Also, the fact that you can't at least easily use this with any other device. You can't plug it into an Android phone or tablet. You can't plug it into an iPhone, an iOS device, a PC. It really is just meant to be used for the Switch 2, which maybe there will be a point at which drivers come out for it that unlock its potential with using it on other things. But I didn't think that the difference between the Switch 1 Pro controller and the Switch 2 Pro controller was worth an additional $85, which, I think it was $75 at Costco where I bought it. But still, it was probably not worth that extra. I would say if you didn't have a Switch 1 and the Switch 2 was the one thing that you wanted, absolutely get a Pro controller with it. But if you already have the Switch 1 controller and are considering the Switch 2, I wouldn't bother. And then there's the dreaded stick drift, which I have not experienced, but apparently is still a thing. I have no idea how they managed to get from the first generation, with that being a problem, all the way through the life cycle of that device into the second version of this, and not either go to Hall effect sensors or some other improvement to keep stick drift from being a thing in the second one. But apparently there was a lesson to be learned that didn't get learned, or I don't know, whatever, the cost of replacing them was going to be less than just doing it right the first time. I don't know. Pretty lame. So the console is powerful, or powerful enough at launch that it's able to pull off things like a decent port of Cyberpunk because of the magic that CD Projekt Red have worked. And from everything I've seen, it's pretty good at launch time with the third-party ports. I think that'll become more challenging as the years progress. And remember, it's been 10 years since the last Switch. I think that as it gets on in its lifespan, the ports are, at least the AAA ports, are likely to get a little bit weaker in comparison to the versions that might be on the PS5 or other devices, because the processor's good. It's not great. It's certainly enough for Nintendo's first-party stuff and the style that they usually apply, the aesthetic for their games. I think that for third-party people, it'll take a little bit of hoop jumping to get that to a good place. The problem for me is that for $450 plus whatever the cost of the accessories are, plus $70 to $80 per game, at least for the first-party ones, and let's be honest, probably then the third-party ones would follow suit. I just think that it's a lot of money to spend on a very iterative device. Don't get me wrong. I think for the right person, the Switch 2 is an amazing console. If you love Nintendo's first-party stuff, it's fantastic. If a Switch 2 is the only place that you play games, then you're going to love it. If you're not spending half your time comparing it to other devices you have, you're going to love it. And if you don't mind the prices being higher than they are elsewhere, then I think that there's a lot to love there. But it's not enough for me. It's too iterative. It's too evolutionary. It's not revolutionary. It's really, really good. It's just not great. And for me to part with that much money on this device, I needed it to be greater than I find it for my use cases. Also, the more I read about Nintendo doing things like bricking people's consoles for plugging in things that they shouldn't be, or having a username that they don't approve of, that they will just out and out ban that console irretrievably for you, I just think is so weak. And these are all things that I knew about a month ago, and I still made the decision to go forward with the purchase. It's just that now, several weeks on, we've seen that Nintendo is going to exercise their ability to brick consoles, or brick the software and effectively brick the console. And that just sucks. Yeah, so I don't doubt that there is going to come a time, and perhaps soon, where there is such a strong roster of first party titles and third party either exclusives or ports that don't compromise themselves too terribly to come to the unit that are going to make it worthwhile to a lot of people, and maybe even to me again in the future. But I just realized that that is not right now, and there are a lot of things that I would rather spend that money on than lining the Nintendo coffers and helping to justify the increased costs of the games. Anyway, I recognize that this has been a little all over the place, and it's partially because I fully intended to do a full fledged deep dive review on it rather than an opinion piece, which is what this has kind of turned into. And then part of it was the further I got away from launch day, the more I realized that I just wasn't enjoying it and I didn't really want to promote it or play it. And the more I watched Nintending in the weeks after this thing launched, the less I wanted to be a part of it. So I recognize I'm probably not representative of most people, and a lot of this probably had to do with the attitude that I went into this with, but truly, I wanted to love it. I wanted to be swayed. And at this juncture, I'm just not. I reserve the right to change my mind again in the future. But now, at least for the next 3 to 6 months, I think I'm out. Anyway, let me know your opinion in the comments. Have you picked it up? Are you loving it? Have you held off? Are you never planning on picking it up? I'm interested to hear your experience. And I do actually love it when people have different opinions other than mine and are able to constructively and respectfully discuss them. So let's do that in the comments. Anyway, beyond that, I hope to see you on the next one. And this has been Kevin from Retro Future Guy. Bye for now.